Imagine paying $5,000 for a dream of sunsets, luxury tents, and the majestic rhythm of the African wild. You feel safe behind the canvas. You feel like a guest. But tonight's stories remind us of one terrifying truth. In the savannah, there are no guests, only predators. And those who haven't been caught yet? Today we bring you 3 real-life safari nightmares. And we start with a story that will make you double-check your locks every single night for the rest of your life. In the African bush, the African wild dog, or painted wolf, is the most successful hunter. Not the lion, not the leopard. These dogs have an 80% kill rate. They don't just hunt. They coordinate. When Ben's Jeep stalled in a dry riverbed in Zimbabwe, he wasn't worried about dogs. He was worried about the radiator. It was 5:30 p.m., the golden hour. But in Africa, the sun doesn't set. It drops. Within 20 minutes, Ben was sitting in a cabin of pitch-black shadows. That's when the chirping started. A high-pitched, bird-like sound communicating across the dark. He counted 10 pairs of glowing eyes in his headlights before the battery finally flickered and died. Ben sat in total silence. Then a heavy thud hit the rear bumper. Then another. He felt the entire 2-ton vehicle rock. These aren't like domestic dogs. They are lean, curious, and incredibly persistent. Through the glass, Ben watched a nightmare unfold. They weren't biting him. They were unboxing the car. He heard the sickening sound of teeth tearing through the rubber seals of his windows. Scree! One dog gripped the plastic fender and began to peel it back with the sound of snapping bone. They were systematically removing everything that wasn't metal. He realized with horror that they weren't just curious, they were looking for a gap. They were testing the glass. For 6 hours, Ben listened to his car being eaten, but the real horror happened at 2 a.m. The rocking stopped. Total silence. Ben thought they had given up. He leaned his head against the side window to see, and his heart stopped. A single dog was standing on its hind legs, its face pressed flat against the glass, just inches from his ear. It wasn't snarling. It was mimicking him. It was breathing when he breathed, fogging up the glass in sync with his own breath. When Ben finally got rescued the next morning, the rangers found that the dogs had chewed through the brake lines and the fuel tank hose. They hadn't just been playing. They had been making sure the car could never leave. They were waiting for Ben to eventually have to step out for water. They play the long game. It was the final night of a 10-day safari in Botswana. Mark and Sarah were staying at an elite eco-camp, the kind of place where you have a king-sized bed inside a massive canvas tent. It's beautiful. It's romantic. It feels like a hotel room, but with the sound of nature right outside. Because the night was unusually humid, Mark decided to leave the heavy canvas door open, keeping only the mosquito mesh zipped up. But the mesh had a tiny tear at the bottom, and the zipper, well, Mark left it about 2 inches from the floor, just a tiny gap for a bit of airflow. He thought, what's the worst that could happen? At 3:15 a.m., Sarah wakes up, not because of a noise, but because of a smell. It's thick, it's heavy, it smells like a mixture of iron, old sweat, and something rotting in the sun. She doesn't move. She realizes the room feels different. The air is heavier. Then she hears it, a wet, rhythmic sound. Lap, lap, lap. Something is licking the condensation off the water carafe on their nightstand. Sarah slowly turns her head, her heart hammering against her ribs so hard she's afraid the creature will hear it. In the pale moonlight filtering through the mesh, she sees a silhouette. It's not a lion. It's a spotted hyena. Over 150 pounds of pure bone-crushing muscle. It's standing right between her bed and Mark's. It's so close she can see the coarse, matted fur on its back. The hyena stops licking the water. It turns its head. Sarah freezes, her eyes wide. She's staring directly into the hyena's eyes. They aren't wild or angry. They're calculating. The animal leans in. It's so close now that Sarah can feel the heat radiating from its snout. She can see the black leather of its nose twitching, inhaling her scent. She wants to scream for Mark, but she knows that the second she opens her mouth, those jaws, which have the highest bite pressure of any mammal in Africa, will snap her neck like a dry twig. Minutes turn into hours. The hyena begins to wander around the tent. It chews on Mark's leather boot. Crunch. The sound of the leather tearing sounds like a gunshot in the silence. It then walks back to Sarah's side of the bed. It rests its heavy head on the edge of the mattress, watching her. It's waiting for her to move. It's waiting for a sign of life or a sign of weakness. As the first gray light of dawn begins to touch the horizon, the hyena huffs. A low, vibrating sound that shakes Sarah to her core. It walks over to the zipper, pushes its snout through the 2-inch gap Mark left, and with effortless strength, rips the mesh open. It pauses one last time, looking back at the two humans, before disappearing silently into the tall grass. When the camp staff arrived with coffee an hour later, they found Mark and Sarah sitting upright in bed, completely catatonic. They didn't say a word for 3 days. The only thing they left behind was the leather boot, or what was left of it, ground into powder by teeth that were designed to eat through anything. The most dangerous thing in a safari is a lion that has lost its fear of cars. Usually a Land Rover is just a big, smelly metal beast to them. But in a remote corner of Tanzania, a pride had learned a new trick. The guide, Thomas, was leading a group of 4 photographers in an open-sided Jeep. No doors, no windows, just a roll cage and a canvas roof. They found a massive male lion, scarred and battle-worn, lying in the middle of the track. Thomas stopped the engine to let the guests take photos. But Thomas noticed something wrong. The lion wasn't looking at the cameras. It was looking at the gap between the seats. The lion stood up. It didn't roar. It didn't charge. It walked with a slow, deliberate stalk toward the back of the Jeep. Thomas whispered, "Nobody move. Do not even click your shutters." The silence was so heavy you could hear the flies buzzing around the lion's face. Then the Jeep groaned. The metal frame shrieked. The lion had placed one massive paw on the spare tire mounted on the back, then the other. 500 pounds of muscle climbed onto the vehicle. The back of the Jeep sank so low the bumper hit the dirt. The photographers were frozen. The lion's tail literally brushing against the shoulder of the man in the back seat. They could smell the metallic scent of old blood on the lion's breath. The lion didn't attack. Instead, it did something much worse. It lay down on the roof of the Jeep, right above their heads. The heavy canvas ceiling began to sag under the lion's weight. the shape of its massive paws pushing down just inches above the passengers' scalps. For 2 hours they were trapped in a lion sandwich. If they started the engine, the vibration might provoke him to reach down through the side. If they moved, he might bite through the canvas. They sat in the sweltering heat, listening to the lion purr, a sound like a low-frequency chainsaw vibrating through their own bones. When the lion finally hopped off to chase a distant gazelle, Thomas looked at his passengers. Their hair had turned white with dust and sweat, but that wasn't the shock. He looked at the roof. The lion hadn't just sat there. It had used its claws to systematically puncture 4 perfect holes in the canvas, right above where each person's jugular would be. It wasn't resting. It was marking its meal for later. If you ever find yourself in a safari jeep and the engine won't start, look at your guide. If he's sweating, start praying. Thanks for listening to tonight's stories. Subscribe if you want to stay on the safe side of the glass. And remember, the bush has ears. Good night.
Thanks for watching. Follow for more true scary stories.
The shadows are waiting for you.